I've been cycling since I was 14, right? And I'm nearly 30 in 2 months. And the narrative for the past, 10 years feels like it's been very much focused on this bike is 10% stiffer, 5% faster, 6% more compliant. It feels like there's been a lot of focus on what the bikes are doing, but there's also been lots of chat saying these claims are nonsense. These bikes aren't actually that much quicker. And maybe they do test slightly quicker in their own wind tunnel testing, but that doesn't mean that for the past 5 years there hasn't been cycling innovations. For me, cycling has probably changed more in the past 5 years than it has in the past 15 years before that. But let me explain why. I'm going to go into a number of products and places where evolution has occurred to make the actual cycling riding experience better. So let's get into the first one. Now, the first one is oversized pulley wheels. I'm kidding, it's not. My first thing that I want to talk about is waxed chains. One of my personal favorite upgrades that you can do to your bike. Not only is it faster, not only do your components wear a lot less, or they wear slower, my favorite thing about it is that it is just so damn clean. You can see here that this is my winter bike and it's absolutely filthy, all this mud caked in on it. But the chain, on the other hand, the chain is perfectly clean, just from a wax chain, and it's absolutely beautiful. But yeah, in all seriousness, I just love how clean a wax chain is. If you haven't at least tried hot melt waxing your chain, please do give it a go. I do have 2 guides that I will link down below on this video that shows you how to do it. But in essence, it's not as hard as you think it is. Once the chain is stripped of any factory grease, it's quite literally take chain off, put it in your wax pot, take it out and let it cool, and then stick it back on your bike. It's honestly as easy as that. When you're riding these in winter, there is a little bit more work to do. As I mentioned just a moment ago, it's not only super clean, all of your components last a lot longer. This chain itself has about 7,000 kilometers on it right now, but this cassette is where the life is really at. I promise you, this cassette has 30,000 kilometers on it right now, and I know because I record all of my chain waxing's mileage and my cassette mileage as well. I've been doing it for 3 years now and there's just no going back for me. If you try it, I don't think there'll be any going back for you either. Coming up next is inner tube innovations, and for me, the best 2 upgrades that have come to road cycling in terms of cycling and inner tubes is both Tubless and TPU tubes, what I've got in my hand right here. I personally run a TPU tube on my road bike just because it's a bit less messy than Tubless and it's very easy just to carry loads of these around. I carry 3 of these in my saddlebag. They weigh 36 grams. When you compare that to a Butyl tube that weighs normally from 100 to about 115 to 120 grams, you add that between 2 inner tubes, that's a mega weight saving. And look at the space that it saves you in your saddlebag, so you can carry more of these around with you. Not only are they lighter, they actually have less rolling resistance than Butyl inner tubes, which I will link the data down below if you want to check any of that out. And not only are they faster than Butyl, you can also get them for practically the same price. Like I said, I use these Ride Now ones. I don't spend any more money on the Western brands. The Ride Now ones come in at like £4.50 to £5 per inner tube. The general consensus is it seems if you buy a pack of 10, one of them might be a dud, but they don't explode on you. They just slowly lose air pressure overnight, and that's because the valve isn't sealed properly. Other than that, they're fantastic. On the other hand, if I talk about Tubless, I actually run Tubless on my time trial bike. Reason being, once again, the first thing is lower rolling resistance. A Tubless tyre is practically as fast as a latex tyre, if not faster in some conditions. And I'll link that data down below again if you want to check that out. But the reason that I like it for racing is that if you do puncture, there is a chance that the tyre will seal itself when you've got the sealant in there. And for me, doing triathlon and time trial, which is where I use my time trial bike, of course, if you have any puncture and if you have to stop on the road for 5, maybe 10 minutes changing an inner tube, well, then it's kind of race over. The next area where I think cycling has evolved amazingly in the last 5 years has to be wheels and design. Wheels have been getting wider and wider, both the internal and the external rim widths. We're now looking from like a 19mm internal to like a 21mm to 25mm as the normal internal rim widths. And then when you get to the external rim widths, you're looking at anywhere between 30mm to like 35mm. This is the Roval, this is 35mm wide, and it is beautifully wide. The one thing that's fantastic about this is that you get to run wider and wider tyres with minimal aerodynamic penalty. Because the tyre and the rim fit together better, they follow the rule of 105, so the width of the rim is 105% the width of the tyre. It just means that it remains aerodynamic and keeps the air stuck to the wheel, even if you are running a wider tyre. It wasn't merely 5 years ago, 6 years ago, where I was still running a 25mm tyre. I wouldn't even dare run a 25mm tyre nowadays. 28mm is the minimum. Of course, the main gain that this really gives you is comfort when on the bike. Or at least, I would like to say that it gives you more comfort. Here in the UK, the roads have just been getting worse and worse and worse. Maybe if you live in Spain, those wider tyres have been making the rides more comfortable, but here in the UK, it's just made these horrific things that we call roads manageable. Before you leave, I do want to talk just a smidge more about wheels. I have one very important thing to talk about, and that is the Chinese wheel market. And honestly, the Chinese wheels have been getting really, really good. In the last 2 years, their progress has accelerated so much. They're lighter than the Western competitors. They're like half the price of the Western competitors. And aerodynamically, a lot of them, maybe even most of them, are further ahead in terms of design width of the internal and external rim widths. So loving to see the Chinese market come through, and it just gives you so much more affordable options. The next innovation that's come about in cycling recently is something else that fits inside your pocket, and that is electric mini pumps. It seems like something so small and something you don't care about until you puncture in winter, your fingies are cold, you're trying to change your inner tube, and then you have to sit there with your mini pump. Or you've got your little CO2 in the breaker, and you freeze your fingers, they're so cold. This, you just press the button and it pumps up the tyre for you. You just hold it on there, and now you can even set it to whatever PSI you want to. They're getting so good. In the last 2 years, these have been amazing. I promise you, if you haven't got an electric mini pump yet and you do puncture, oh, they're so good. I can highly recommend one. I'm not even sponsored or anything by these guys. This is just the one that I have. Don't skip to the next bit. Let me explain myself on this one. I do want to talk about aero bikes. Now, as I said in the intro, a lot of companies have been making a lot of claims on their aerodynamics, but that's not what I care about here. Aero bikes in the last 5 years have become comfortable. They've become usable. Their handling has got better. Essentially now, you're not punished for buying an aero road bike. I think all the ones that I've personally tested, you could live with them day to day, as if you have the flexibility, if you don't mind the extra reach. But yeah, they've just become more usable. This bike here in particular is actually more comfortable than the old SL3 Roubaix that I've got over there on my winter bike for the same width tyre. So yeah, if you put the aero claims aside, honestly, aero road bikes are becoming more comfortable and more usable day in, day out. Before I leave you, there is one thing that I did want to put on here, but I don't think the technology is quite there yet, and that is 3D printing. I've personally dabbled in 3D printing a bit myself. For my Roval handlebar here, I've actually 3D printed a leveling piece, so it levels out my stem. It was pointed down a little bit. Not what you expect when you spend £400 on a pair of handlebars, but it just made it very easy to fix. Then I've also 3D printed some bar end plugs for me and my friends, so everyone's got their own custom 3D printed bar end plugs. I'll link that video down below if you want to check that out if you're interested. But 3D printing titanium's getting good. They are making bottom brackets and they are making lugs and connective parts, but I just think we still need a bit more time before it becomes a widespread and usable thing by most people in the cycling community. Anyway guys, that's my opinion on some of the cycling innovations and evolutions that have come up in the past few years, more specifically the past 5 years. And I think cycling has actually got very, very good because of those innovations. But let me know what you think. Do you think I've missed any? Do you disagree? If you do disagree, just give me a reason why. Don't just say it's rubbish. But anyway guys, I've been Jason. This has been Cycling Unboxed. See you in another video.